Thank you so much for joining us here in Chicago. I'm going to ask a few questions and then we'd love to hear from you after, but I was hoping you could talk a little bit about the structure of the film, because I love the way that it unfolds and kind of goes back on itself and things are peeled back in layers almost. But starting in Germany, and so much of what is set up in Germany, we hear echoes of or see echoes of back in the village in Transylvania. And so if you could talk a little bit about when you thought about that structure and starting it in Germany and then how it was going to unfold and reflect back. I would love it.
First of all, the film starts from a real incident that happened, and the part with the baker is quite close to what happened. Actually, in early 2020, before COVID, there was this big factory over there in this area inhabited mostly by Hungarians who, because the management couldn't find local workers, they decided to just bring people from outside, and they brought some Sri Lankans, and the community protested, and they ended up by having that, town meeting that you see in the film, and somebody recorded that, and they placed it on the internet, and it became a huge scandal the second moment. And so there was, all the press was there, and then it was international press, and the Prime Minister needed to say something to calm things down. So it was very popular. And all of a sudden, what was interesting is that these people, from today until tomorrow, they learned that they are the most xenophobic and intolerant people in Europe. They couldn't really tell why, because they were only expressing out loud things that very many people believe. Only that they have learned through this kind of political correctness that you're not supposed to say what you believe in public. And they were, if you want, just more naive and honest. And all of a sudden, you started asking yourself, why would people in a community who is a minority over there would be so intolerant with somebody else who is also would be even more a minority than themselves. And that was, if you want, the starting point, and that's the part which corresponds a little bit to what happened. But the two main characters were fictional, and everything else was built up in this idea that I'm always having of not reenacting what happened, because this is not important. What's important is to understand what this story speaks about, or what it could be speaking about. And for me, this is so much a story about the state of the world today. It's not about Transylvania, it's not just about Romania, it's not even just about Europe. It's about us as people, and it's about human nature, and it's about how we relate to the other, and about the fact that, we're not always this wonderful, superior, empathic human beings that we claim to be, rather the contrary. And we have this idea always that if something goes wrong, it's always more somebody else's responsibility. We're never guilty. Somebody else's. And eventually, somebody who doesn't look like us, it's different. I would say that I think we're very, very tribal animals, and we need to belong to our community. And, from this perspective, I was trying to have a lot of layers in the film. But first of all, to speak about, this anxiety that we feel today in the world. Also because, this kind of catastrophic future that we thought would come someday in hundreds of years, now it looks as if it might come very soon, like in tens of years, and eventually during the lifespan of our children. And if you're a parent, this brings a lot of anxiety. Not to mention, plastic floating on the Atlantic, and North Pole melting, and the resources ending up in June, and all this kind of stuff. So people feel this kind of stress. So for me, what was important in the film is to find, if you want, the visual equivalent of a lot of abstract values that I wanted to talk about. How do you talk about fear and anxiety? You're a filmmaker, you need to shoot something. But it's like this. So this is why I was scouting a lot for a village which I needed to be surrounded by this forest. Because for me in the film, this I associated something with the forest, which is the subconscious. If you try to walk during the night in the forest, you will see that it's kind of difficult. You turn around all the time and you look, you feel that there's something floating in the air, very, very, very menacing. And so, I associate this forest and this darkness a lot with all this kind of inside, internal, murky impulses that you have. And finally, this helped me speak about, this internal conflict that we all have inside ourselves between our more human nature, if you want, more empathic nature, and this animalic and instinctual side, which also coexists, and there's this struggle all the time. And if you are not aware and you're not prepared enough, it's rather the instinctual and animalic side will pop out on whatever unexpected situation.
I mean, I think it's interesting that you talk about like shooting fear, or kind of creating fear or anxiety, not just through narrative, but for me, I felt it so much in the sound design in the film. And so whether it's the dogs barking or, I mean, in a lot of the film, to me, when you think about all the languages, there's also the silence of Rudy, in contrast to all the languages being spoken, but all of the sounds that are part of the daily life and are embedded in the film. And to me, that also contributed very strongly to this kind of sense of anxiety or fear. And if you could talk a little bit about thinking about the sound design.
When I make the film, I try to communicate on several levels, and one of them is consists in the fact that I don't want you to tell how the main characters experience the situation. I want to make you feel and experience this anxiety that they experience in the situation. And from this, there's the way of shooting and the way of using sound design. And a lot of choices come from this. For example, in this opening scene, you will never see what the child sees because that's not so important. Whenever you have this anxiety coming from inside you, the more the object of your anxiety is emphasized, the more anxious you're going to be. And I work a lot with the sound, given that I don't edit within the scenes. So this is very complicated. Every other scene is just in one shot. So all I can do is to try to have, and I'm not using music, extra edit music, non-diegetical. So the sound, I take very many weeks to work on the sound and to make sure that there's everything, a lot of things happening, and that the sound is very narrative as well. There are some scenes which are not very clear to spectators, I'm aware of this always, but still, if you listen also to the sound, you will get some extra hints to understand what it's all about. And if you start shooting the way I shoot, in this kind of subjective way somehow, with points of view, you will learn very easily that the world of the film is bigger than what the camera shoots. There's always happening something, out of the frame. And little by little you understand that, it's a bigger world than this.
Right, and bigger than whoever's point of view that we're seeing it from.
I used, it's the first film after several in which I was using just an individual point of view, in which I'm using kind of two.
Yeah.
But I never, for example, give the screenplay to the actors, like the full screenplay. Every other actor gets the scenes in which he plays. And this is also, well, not because I want to be bad with the actors or whatever, have a very good relationship, but as a character. Since you do not have information about what happened while you were not there, you shouldn't be having this neither as an actor.
Right.
And this helps somehow, because they are not judgmental. If you give them the screenplay, they start playing a little bit the general message of the film, or whatever they think is the general message. Or they're actors, they should relate to the situation and be truthful with the situation, with their limited subjectivity to the situation.